Silence in the Red Bull garage. Engineers stare at the telemetry as if it's a trick. Verstappen steps out of the RB21, calm, eyes steady, as if he's just returned from a different dimension. Mekies leans over the data monitor, frowning. "That can't be right," he says quietly. "The floor is generating more load than in simulation." Verstappen removes his gloves, smiles faintly, and says, "It's not the air that's changing. It's how you listen to it." In the Red Bull garage, the mood was different. The air inside wasn't just hot, it was electric. Laurent Mekies, the man now leading Red Bull after the storm of change, watched over a wall of monitors. The RB21 sat in the center of the garage, its new floor gleaming under the fluorescent lights. It was a radical design, lighter, sharper, more aggressive. The engineers had warned him that Mexico's thin air could make it unpredictable, unstable even. Mekies had nodded, accepting the risk. Because if there was one driver capable of finding control in uncertainty, it was Verstappen. When the engine fired, the sound cut through the heat like a blade. Verstappen rolled out of the pit lane, visor down, expression unreadable. No warm-up games, no overtalk on the radio. Just the stillness of a man listening to the throttle, to the tires, to the way the car vibrated under his fingertips. Every bump, every gust of air mattered. He wasn't chasing grip, he was studying it. As he powered through the first lap, the car looked tense, nervous, twitching under load. But by the second, something shifted. The lines became smoother. The rear end, which had been on a knife's edge, started to settle. The RB21 wasn't being controlled. It was being understood. Back in the garage, Mekies leaned closer to the data. His engineers were whispering, confused. The aerodynamic load curve had flattened, stable, efficient, perfect. "That's not possible," one of them said. "The airflow shouldn't behave like that up here." Mekies didn't respond. He'd seen Verstappen do this before, that strange ability to sense the car beyond what the sensors could show. Still, even he wasn't prepared for what came next. Verstappen crossed the line, 1 minute, 17.392. A full second faster than anyone had managed all day. And he did it without a single mistake. By the time the Red Bull trucks rolled into Mexico City, the talk in the paddock wasn't about dominance anymore. It was about doubt. For all their reputation, the RB21 had struggled on high-altitude circuits that stripped its downforce and punished its precision. The engineers had worked for months to fix it, designing a new floor that could catch and manage thinner air. On the computers back in Milton Keynes, it looked beautiful. In theory, it should have been perfect. But theory doesn't breathe. Theory doesn't sweat in the heat or shiver when the air disappears. Laurent Mekies knew the risk. He'd taken charge of Red Bull at a time when stability mattered more than innovation, but Mexico was too brutal to ignore. So they gambled. For major aerodynamic components were changed: the underfloor design, the side pod intake geometry, the floor edge wing, and the cooling ducts. Together, they were supposed to build a new aerodynamic signature. But no one in the garage truly knew how those systems would behave 2,000 meters above sea level, where the air doesn't behave like air. It behaves like smoke. As Verstappen climbed into the cockpit for FP2, Mekies gave a quiet nod to his race engineer. No speeches, no strategy briefings. Just observation. The first few laps were always the truth serum, the moment when numbers meet instinct. And the truth hit immediately. The RB21 was nervous. The rear was stepping out, the balance unstable, the flow under the new floor breaking too early. On the radio, most drivers would have complained. But Verstappen didn't say a word. He stayed silent, circling the track like a hunter reading the terrain. Every lap, every corner, every throttle modulation was a question he was asking the car. And slowly, it began to answer. On the 5th lap, the engineers noticed something strange. The telemetry wasn't showing chaos anymore. The downforce levels were stabilizing. The rear load curve was flattening. The airflow under the floor was regaining consistency. "That's not possible," one aerodynamicist whispered. "Nothing's changed." Mekies leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "No," he said. "Something has." He knew exactly what had changed Verstappen. He was adjusting his entire driving rhythm to the behavior of the air itself. The discovery became clearer with every lap. Verstappen wasn't forcing the RB21 to obey him. He was learning how to let it breathe. He was delaying turn-in by fractions of a second, lifting his throttle just early enough to let the airflow under the new floor reattach before loading it again. To the naked eye, it looked effortless. But to the engineers watching the live data, it was orchestral. He was balancing the car on invisible air. Then came the first radio message. Calm, analytical, almost surgical. "The car doesn't like to be rushed," Verstappen said. "If you give it time, it gives you everything back." Mekies looked up from the monitors. He'd been in Formula One for decades, seen champions come and go, but this was different. This wasn't feedback, it was philosophy. Verstappen had found what the simulations couldn't: a connection between human timing and mechanical breathing. As the lap times dropped, the story wrote itself. 1 minute, 17.392. A full second faster than anyone else. Leclerc, Piastri, Hamilton all chasing, none close. The RB21, under Verstappen's control, wasn't just fast. It was fluent. Mekies turned to his engineers, half in disbelief, half in admiration. "He's not fighting the car," he said quietly. "He's translating it." By the time Verstappen returned to the garage, the data screens told a story of transformation. The aerodynamic instability that had haunted Red Bull in previous years was gone, replaced by smooth, consistent load and perfect energy recovery. Mekies walked toward Verstappen as he climbed out of the car. "How did you find it so fast?" he asked. Verstappen smiled slightly, wiping his hands. "It's just timing," he said. "You can't chase the air here. You have to dance with it." The moment Verstappen returned to the garage, the Red Bull engineers looked like they'd seen something supernatural. There was no celebration, no chatter, just silence. The kind of silence that comes when logic collapses. Every monitor glowed with the same data. The aerodynamic load under the new floor had remained perfectly stable. Not one fluctuation. Not one loss of grip. And yet, the engineers hadn't touched a single setup parameter since he'd left the pit lane. Laurent Mekies stood in the middle of the room, arms folded, eyes on the screen. "Run it again," he said. The telemetry replayed Verstappen's fastest lap, the throttle trace flowing like water, the brake application pulsing in rhythm with the downforce curve. Every action was anticipatory. Every correction happened before the car demanded it. "He's not reacting to it," one aerodynamicist whispered. "He's predicting it." Mekies nodded slowly. "No," he said, his voice calm but certain. "He's guiding it." The engineers began to compare Verstappen's data to the simulations. What they found was almost impossible. The pressure distribution under the floor, the delicate, invisible dance of airflow that every aerodynamicist spends years trying to master, matched the theoretical model almost perfectly. But it wasn't the car that had achieved that harmony. It was Verstappen's timing. The way he braked fractionally earlier, released the pedal with surgical precision, and delayed his steering input by milliseconds. He wasn't just driving through the turbulence, he was orchestrating it. When Verstappen walked into the debrief room, there was no applause. Just eyes, dozens of them waiting for an explanation. He took off his gloves, nodded to Mekies, and sat down. Mekies gestured toward the monitor. "You've done something none of us can explain," he said. "The car's behaving like it's at sea level. What are you doing differently?" Verstappen looked at the data for a few seconds, then answered in his usual understated way. "It's not about doing something," he said. "It's about not doing too much. The car doesn't want to be rushed here. The air takes longer to recover when it breaks away. You just have to wait for it." The room went still. Every engineer, every analyst, every aerodynamicist knew exactly what he meant, and yet none of them had seen it so clearly before. The new RB21 floor, built to capture unstable air, needed time to reattach flow after each corner. Verstappen had felt that not through sensors, but through fingertips and instinct. He'd found the natural breathing rhythm of the car. "So you're telling us," Mekies said slowly, "that you're synchronizing with the air?" Verstappen smiled. "I guess you could say that. You can't force it, you have to let it come back to you." For a long moment, no one spoke. The data on the screen confirmed everything. His lap wasn't just clean, it was harmonic. The energy recovery system, which usually struggles at altitude, had achieved 98% efficiency. The battery charge cycles matched perfectly with his throttle modulation. The car had become an extension of his body, operating as one continuous, seamless organism. "He's stabilizing the floor with rhythm," said one engineer, half in disbelief. Mekies glanced back at him. "No," he said quietly. "He's stabilizing the air itself." When the meeting ended, Mekies stayed behind, staring at the final lap overlay. Verstappen's inputs weren't mechanical, they were musical. There was cadence, timing, tone. It wasn't the aggression of a racer, it was the patience of an artist. Mekies knew this was what separated Verstappen from everyone else on the grid. "He's not fighting the car," he murmured to himself. "He's teaching it how to breathe." As the rest of the team packed up, the night deepened outside the garage. The air in Mexico City grew even thinner, colder, quieter. Yet inside, there was a strange warmth, the quiet awe that only comes after witnessing something extraordinary. The data would be studied, the lap dissected, but Mekies already knew the truth.